Welcome to 2K Sports Studios. I'm Greg Gumbel with Clark Kellogg. We're here with the 2K Sports Season Preview Show. These are the top 5 teams in college hoops as we begin the new season. The Duke Blue Devils come in as the #1 ranked team, followed by Florida, Louisville, Tennessee, and Arizona. So Clark, what's your initial impression of our top 5 teams?
I like the potential of each of these teams. I think all of them have a chance to win the championship this year. They're poised, loaded with talent, hungry, and very eager to prove themselves this coming year. I think each of these teams will be a dream to coach.
The Duke Blue Devils are projected as the favorites here in the early going. They are a very strong team, but they have plenty of competition from within their own league.
It's virtually impossible to go through a conference schedule unscathed. They'll probably take their lumps, but it might pay off come tournament time, as tough conferences tend to produce tough teams.
Florida is in the #2 spot. They were unstoppable last season, finishing with 26 wins.
Matching that record is going to be a challenge, but they've simply got to forget about the past and get to the business of winning games right here, right now.
Louisville comes in as #3. They carry over 3 starters from last year, so there shouldn't be too much of a learning curve for this team.
Yeah, they've got the core of that team coming back, and that's going to be huge for them. There won't be much of the feeling out process that so many other teams will have to work through early in the season.
Tennessee starts the year as the 4th-ranked team. Their tournament last year came to an abrupt end with a loss in the second round, Clark.
It can be demoralizing for a team not to get past the first weekend of the tournament, but they've had all summer to forget about that loss and instead build on the positives from last season.
Arizona is the #5 team. They bring back 4 starters, and that should pay huge dividends for them this year.
After their Final Four run last March, and with many key players coming back, their confidence has to be sky high. I expect big things from them this season.
Here's the next group of teams in our preseason top 25. What do you think of this group, Clark?
The upside of these teams far outweighs the downside. Expect at least half of these teams to finish the season in the top 10, and 1 or 2 of them have a chance to be right at the top.
The Texas Longhorns, the #7 team, have been a topic of discussion heading into the season. They're going to have to find someone to fill the void left by their departed leading scorer, Clark.
The important thing for them is not to thrust someone into that role just for the sake of it. It will be a much smoother transition if the players are allowed to ease into their new spot.
The Connecticut Huskies, the #15 team, have also generated a lot of interest. They're the defending champs, but they're going to have a tough road to hoe to hold on to their crown.
At least they're still there in the poll. That means a lot of the experts still think this team is going to be strong. I'd like to see what kind of start they get off to before I decide whether they have the ability to repeat.
Okay, Clark, let's take a look at the teams that close out the preseason top 25 poll. What do you think of this collection?
The difference between this group and the previous group is depth, plain and simple. They can match up with anybody at the start of the game, but due to a short bench, they just won't be able to keep up through the end.
The Georgetown Hoyas, the #17 team, could be one to watch. They had a wonderful year last season, finishing with 23 wins.
That total identified them as a team to be reckoned with in college basketball. I won't be surprised to see them reach or surpass that total again this season.
The Michigan Wolverines, the #25 team, are also worth keeping an eye on. Certainly, they'll get a big boost from the return of their leading scorer from a year ago.
That's a big advantage for them. They don't have to spend the first few weeks of the season searching for that go-to guy. They know who he is, and they'll use him.
As usual, we have a lot of new coaching hires to tell you about as we start the season. You now see all the coaches who will be heading to new programs. Some very substantial changes can be seen, that's for sure. The Connecticut coach is one of the hires that drew a lot of media attention. The Connecticut Huskies have a lot of fans that are delighted to have a coach of his ability, Clark.
He's yet to find his way to that final weekend, but he still has an impressive resume. His new school is certainly hoping he can add a Final Four run to his list of accomplishments.
The St. John's coach also made a move to a new school, and that's generated some excitement on that campus. The Red Storm of St. John's are a team looking to rebuild under their new leader.
This is a big break for him. He's paid his dues with a lot of stops along the coaching highway, and now it's time for a new beginning. We wish him all the success in the world, Greg. He definitely deserves a fair shot.
We now head to the part of the show where we break down the top players in the nation and show you our preseason All-American list. What you see before you is the cream of the crop in college hoops. What a list. The Memphis Tigers are pinning their hopes squarely on this young man's shoulders, Clark.
Woodward is the first player on the list for good reason.
His impact on a game isn't limited to his defense and scoring. Perhaps his biggest role is that of dime dropper. He led his team in assists last season, and his ability to distribute makes him even more dangerous.
As for our next first-teamer, Duke is more than willing to go into battle with him, Clark.
Let is simply a spectacular player. Feels like this guy's been playing college basketball forever. This will be his 4th year as a starter. But I still don't take him for granted, and I think this will be his best season of all of them.
Next up is a player that's drawing comparisons to some of the all-time college greats. The Tennessee Volunteers are fortunate to have him in their corner.
Patton is one of my favorite players in the country.
He was a monster on the glass last season.
He came away with an average of 5 rebounds a game.
You can expect him to hit the boards with the same kind of fervor this year. He loves to mix it up inside.
Let's move on to a player who's worked very hard to earn his spot on the list. The Clemson Tigers can depend on a solid effort from him each and every night.
Tinsley is going to play a huge role in his team's success.
His outstanding defense is spurred by unbelievable athletic ability. He can rise up and deny any player anywhere on the floor, evidenced by his numbers last year.
He averaged more than 2 a game. Just from an intimidation standpoint, he is a game changer. I think he'll force opposing offenses to completely overhaul their game plans.
And finally, we have another superb player to round out the first team. The UCLA Bruin will probably get used to seeing him make the impossible look ordinary.
Morton is going to have his own personal highlight reel by the end of this season. He finished last season as a second-team All-American, but I think he deserves a spot on the first team to start this year. If he was one of the 10 best players then, he's definitely one of the 5 best players now.
As we move to the second-team All-Americans, we can see there's no shortage of talent with this group. They're all elite players with the potential to dominate the game. The Louisville Cardinals have built their team around this young man's talent. And I'd say that's a pretty good idea.
Goodwin was close to a spot on the first team, but there was too much competition this season. He's got a mean streak running through him, and that's exactly what you need to be a dominant rebounder like he is. He's the leading rebounder on his team, and he relishes that role.
Our next player is a tremendous talent in his own right. Louisville is in for a treat if he can pull it all together and have a great year.
Bate is in the spotlight for all the right reasons. He can make things happen on the basketball court thanks to his unique ability to read and are just trying to come up with their next move. He's 3 steps ahead of the game, and that's what separates the good players from the great.
We can all look forward to some very exciting highlights from this young man this year. The Duke Blue Devils hope to have this young man carry the load for them, and he looks up to the task.
Nicholas
Is at the crux of his team's postseason hopes.
It isn't out of the realm of possibility to say that he might even be a little bit underrated. I know it seems far-fetched to say that about a preseason All-American pick, but I'm not sure people realize just what a huge year he's in for, Greg.
Our next All-American may have designs on the first team by the end of the season. UCLA has one of the most reliable go-to guys in the country in him.
Goff is one of the great talents in the college game today. He's a former high school Mr. Basketball he was California's Mr. Basketball in high school.
He was the best of the best in his state, but now he wants to prove that he's the best in the nation. He has the skills to do it, so we'll keep him on the watch list.
Here is the final player to cap off our list of All-Americans. The Fighting Irish of Notre Dame know who their fan favorite is going to be this year.
Levin is ready to have a breakout season. He was his conference's player of the year last season, and there's no doubt he'll be back in the running for that award this year, too. In fact, he may have some say in the race for National Player of the Year.
All right, Clark, thanks very much. Glad you could join us for the 2K Sports Season Preview. We hope you enjoy all the college hoops action ahead. So long, everyone.